Hi everyone, this is Broken Angel, and welcome to week 10 of Mark Renee's 1 year plan to learn to draw. I continue to focus on increasing my drawing speed while maintaining or improving line accuracy and observation. Just like in week 9, I practiced gesture drawing, 2-point perspective scenes, and portrait drawings. This week, I also added body constructions to my practice. With all that in mind, here's how week 10 went. On day 1, I did 3 body constructions using what I learned from Draw Like a Sir's video on the topic. The process started with drawing a basic 2D mannequin, lightly erasing it, and going over it again with a more detailed version. That said, I made the male mannequin too detailed. For this day, I tended to draw the upper bodies too thin, but did a good job with the lower bodies. Luckily, the proportions were mostly accurate, though I left too much space between the torso and pelvis. My line confidence was low since it was my first day of doing body constructions, and this led to chicken scratching. Overall, it was a decent first attempt at body construction, but I have a lot to learn. On day 2, I did 3 5-minute gesture drawings and moved on to making a portrait drawing. For the gesture drawings, I did a good job with the proportions, flow, and exaggerations. Most of the shapes were decent, with the legs on the last one being one of the main parts that could have been better. I drew more details on the bodies of the first 2, and made sure to add the spear for the last one to explain the leaning. For the portrait drawing, the shirt and neck both turned out well, but I didn't push the cheek out far enough. This led to the face looking flat and angular, even though the overall head shape was good. The hair and ear details were done well, and I copied the mouth without including all of the lines. Unfortunately, when I was copying it over, I put it too close to the side of the face. The eyes, nose, and eyebrows all looked pretty good, with the shape of the eyes looking a little off. Overall, the portraits are improving and the gestures are looking pretty good. On day 3, I made a 2-point perspective scene, starting with the parts in the front and working my way back. The roads, cars, and fence all looked good in the end, but the car in the front ended up looking a bit short lengthwise. The buildings, moving from left to right, looked decent overall. I did a good job with the perspective lines, and buried the heights when appropriate, and there was less wobble with the long lines. To finish the drawing, I made cuts into the cars, which turned out well, though they did highlight the length issue on the front car. Overall, I'm really happy with the results, and I'm liking how the perspective drawings are turning out. On day 4, I drew another 3 body constructions, and there was already a noticeable improvement. I still drew the upper bodies too thin, but they were better than before. The lower bodies ended up being a similar thickness to the upper bodies, and the proportions were generally pretty good. The spacing between the torso and pelvis was better on each of them, though the hands were slightly off, and the shape of the arms could use some work. Unfortunately, I overcorrected on the male mannequin and didn't include enough details, especially for the shins and feet. On the other hand, my line confidence was a lot better. I still had some chicken scratching, but there wasn't as much as before. Overall, it was a better attempt at body construction, but I still need to work on it. On day 5, I did 3 more 5-minute gesture drawings and made another portrait drawing. For the gesture drawings, the proportions, flow, and exaggerations were solid, but the shapes could have been better, especially the limbs and waist on the first one. In order to get more detail, I'll have to increase my speed while hopefully keeping my line accuracy. For the portrait drawing, I started with the shirt since it was the base of the portrait and it turned out well. The head outline and neck were good, though it looks like I gave him a bit of a receding hairline when I copied it over. I did a good job with the eyes and eyebrows, but could have done a better job with the nose and mouth shapes. The beard was decent, even if it was slightly off, but the ear looks really good. To finish the drawing, I fixed the head shape and the hair in the back. Overall, it was a lot better than previous portrait drawings, though both it and the gesture drawings could have been better. On day 6, I made another 2-point perspective scene, and started with the cars and buildings on the rightmost edge. The cars had good proportions, and the buildings ended up looking pretty good. I kept the perspective, varied the heights, and made sure the widths were accurate. After that, I moved on to the buildings in the middle and worked my way right. I did well with keeping the perspective and varying the heights, though the bottom lines on several of them were wobbly as I got close to the vanishing point. To finish the drawing, I did the street and the buildings on the left. I added a dumpster next to the building, which turned out well, though I could have pushed the buildings in the background further from the vanishing point. They looked a bit off since they were so close. Overall, it wasn't a bad perspective drawing, but there were parts that could have been better. On day 7, I did another 3 5-minute gesture drawings and made a 3rd portrait drawing. For the gesture drawings, I did better with the shapes than before, though there is still room for improvement. The exaggerations could have been pushed more, but I did a good job with the proportions and flow. For the portrait drawing, I started with the basic hair shape and did a good job, though I drew the left side a bit too narrow. Because of this, the face wound up being too wide. I also drew the chin too far right and should have noticed that it was supposed to be almost in the middle. The eyes and eyebrows were decent, with the good shapes, but I placed them in relation to the edges of the face, which made them too far apart because of the mistake with the hair. The nose was okay, just a bit narrow, and the lips weren't full enough. Luckily, I added a line to show they were being pulled to the right. The details for the hair were okay, but drooped a bit too much on the left side. I finished the drawing with the shirt and the bit of the arm that's showing, both of which turned out well. Overall, not the best day of drawing, but it was still good practice. With this first full week of March material, things went pretty well, and I'm happy with the progress. For the gesture drawings, the speed and accuracy were okay, but they still need work if I want to add more details. I struggled a bit with the observation, but it wasn't too bad. The shape saw quite a bit of improvement, and I had good proportions and exaggerations for the most part. For the body constructions, it started out rough, but I'm already seeing improvement. The proportions are getting better, and I'm still refining the mannequins. My line confidence is improving, but it still needs work. For the 2-point perspective scenes, I captured the perspective well with only a few hiccups, and was able to sometimes add extra details, like cutting out the car shapes on day 3. I'm happy with the improvement in line quality, but I know it can still get better. For the portrait drawings, I'm still improving, though it's not linear. I know that continuing to work on observation will help since I need to copy the lines from the references more accurately. Early mistakes are still causing the rest of the portraits to look off. If you're going through a journey of learning anything, or if you have any tips that you'd like to share, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. With that, that's 10 weeks down and 42 to go. I'll see you in week 11.